So welcome everyone. This is our second to last session in the Best of COABE 2024 conference series. We always have these long titles. We actually just came back, Dr. Tyler and I, from this year's Coalition of Adult Basic Educators Conference. It was in Dallas, and I got to bring back a bug with me. So sorry if I do cough during introductions. But yeah, we've already got ideas, inspiration, and materials for the upcoming programmatic year for our next Best of COABE 2025 series. So looking forward to that. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. We've got quite a healthy number. I think it's been almost 5 months since the previous session. So it's good to see you all. I know I'm very excited for today's session on data because I know very little about the data you guys collect at your institutions and also for compliance purposes on the state. And when I found out that Dr. Tyler was going to share with us how this data can better serve us, can better inform us for how we work with our students and how we improve the student experience, I was really, really excited for that. So I'm so glad you have all joined me today. So yeah, let me just introduce you to Dr. Tyler Harvey, for those of you who are not already familiar with him. He is currently the coordinator of data and assessment at Alamance Community College, and he served there for 10 years, which is quite a good, healthy number. He used to be the chief high school equivalency examiner, and he also worked part-time as assessment specialist, GED evening examiner, and orientation instructor. And he shared with me, he used to be a high school teacher and a pre-K teacher. So I bet he's got lots of stories about those cute little gremlins in his pre-K class. So, but we will not be talking about that today. His educational background is in bachelor's in history and social studies education. He's got a master's in curriculum and instruction and a doctorate in adult education. And finally, he did share with me a few interesting facts that I wanted to share with you all because they are really cute and endearing. First of all, he is a professional wrestling fan, not wrestler, but fan. And he is also currently learning Spanish. So if anyone wants to help him with that, feel free to do that. And I think I am done with introductions because I know we got a lot to learn and discuss from Dr. Tyler Harvey. So with that, I gift you the stage, sir. You can take it away.
Okay. All right. So first off, I just want to welcome everyone to this COABE session. I am just thankful that everybody took time out of their schedule to come hear about data collection and student experience. I hope that throughout the presentation today that not only did I share with you enough information as far as data collection methods that you can use in your programs and some things you may already be using, but also relating it back to the idea of the student experience. So what is my role at ACC? I am currently the coordinator of data assessment and transitions. So my role is that I oversee the following areas in our program, which include the data entry and our different collection methods, and most importantly, that's our advanced system. And I also advise program decisions based on our FTE and MSGs. I am also have oversight over our assessment, so that's our TABE and TABE Class E, the GED and HiSET test. I currently oversee transitions to Succeed courses or the former RISE courses. I also help with auditing, and I also help manage our front desk staff, our front desk team at both our campuses in Graham and also at the Dillingham Center. Along with those roles, I also serve on our curriculum and instruction committee, our Dev Ed committee, our student and employee experience committee, which is really where a lot of the second half of this presentation will come from. And then within our community, I also serve on our reentry council. I'm a member of the Alamance leadership cohort. And I'm also part of the For Alamance project that is ran by the Harwood Institute. So just as we get started, I have a couple of thank yous and people that I want to acknowledge. And most definitely thank you to Dan and Lee for asking me to do this presentation today to our president, Dr. Engel, for his leadership and his spearheading this idea of the student experience. Um, my vice president, Justin Snyder, and to my immediate supervisor, our executive director of college and peer readiness for ACC, Jen Mock. I am thankful because they trust me with a lot of things within our department and our division. So I am just so thankful for them, and to Melba Aguirre, Jamie Isaac, and Lorena Sarmiento, who serve. Melba is our LEIS specialist, Jamie is our admin assistant, and Lorena is our chief examiner. So I am thankful for them because they keep me grounded, and they always are willing to help me problem solve different areas that we have. And most importantly, to all the staff that are under that are I supervise, I am thankful for them and the work that they do across our division, across our program. They truly make our program, the work that we do, much better. So I am thankful to them. And also just thankful to our coordinator staff who also work with me on a daily basis as we continue to make CCR the great thing that it is. So what are some of my objectives today? Some of the objectives that I have is that I hope that you learn various data collection methods, both qualitative and quantitative, and that we learn more about the student experience process. I also hope that we learn to evaluate different student entry points. I'm going to speak a lot more about that in depth as we go throughout the presentation, and also that we apply new skills within our CCR programs. So with that, I'm going to start off first by talking about our data collection methods. So the two main types of data that we collect is that qualitative and quantitative. And so each set of data, as you can see on the screen, have a purpose, what type we collect, our approach to it, and the analysis of it. So both types of data can provide meaning to our programs and have a lasting impact on our performance. These types of data collection methods can drive our decision making and program operations along with progression planning. So looking at not only just the how much or the how many, but also answer the question of why did that happens. There's a session that I went to at COABE when we were in Nashville, and one of the things that they talked about was that data tells a story. So data is more than just the numbers that we report, but there's also a rationale or reasoning behind why those numbers work and behind why those numbers appear the way that they do. So one of the main takeaways from this is that I'm hoping that I make the correlation that qualitative and quantitative data both work hand in hand. They're not just standalones. So why is data collection important to our programs? What makes data a key driving force in our decision making? So data can help with program performance. It can help you. It can help us look at when we evaluate our programs, the effectiveness of what we do. Data can also drive informed decision making. So basically, instead of having just an assumption, we now have evidence that can help us make the decisions that in our programs on a daily basis. It can help us implement or research best practices because there are some things that data may show that, hey, this was a good thing. Let's continue to do it. But then on the other hand, it may allow for a reduction of program hindrances, those things that we do that maybe our data shows that, hey, maybe we shouldn't continue that practice. Data also allows us to identify root causes or possible causes to issues. They help us understand the patterns and trends and relationships that may not be as evident. There may be some things that as we look through different data collection methods that will allow us to see what do these things have in common, and how can we use those things that are in common to help evaluate our overall programs as a whole. Data collection can be used to measure effectiveness or to see is the work that we're doing, what is the outcome of it, and how does that outcome reflect future decisions that have to be made. And this also can improve engagement. It can also show, hey, that as we go through our programs and as we look at the different decisions that we have to make, it also can help us improve our relationships, not only with our students, but also across the board. So one of the first sessions that I attended that really stood out to me and really drove this need to look at data collection methods was a session called Becoming a Data Detective. This session was hosted by the Maryland Adult Education Division, which is housed under the Department of Labor. This session dealt with interpreting NRS testing data. So looking at Table 4 and Table 4B, and looking at how to really assess the different levels and where to see where possible changes can be made and what possible things can be done to help increase the numbers for those individual levels. It looked at overall approaches to data collection, and it also looked at, and they used their system in Maryland to help just see what was happening with the data over a period of time. They reviewed data weekly and sometimes daily, and and used that data to make some type of meaning out of it. Um, this is where they use the comment, data tells a story. So oftentimes we collect different things such as FTEs and MSGs and the posters and those things that we are required to do because we're required to meet a certain measure, but there's a story behind the numbers. So in case if let's say that there's a certain EFL level that done less in performance at another level, then that might be something that as a program we would look at and say, okay, well, what is it about this level or about this factor, about this piece that's causing it to be lower compared to others? This session brought out the importance of using data as a means to drive performance. So the data in the program, though it may not be of interest to some, the numbers really do matter. And not only do they matter, but the reasoning behind the numbers matters as well. This talked about the importance of having connections between data people and the administrators of the program. It's important that relationship is fostered, and also that relationship also can be used to have that informed decision making. It also talked about the importance of connecting with the instructional staff. It talked about the importance of how programs should connect their data team with their instructors. So that way it helps because when we give out the post test or we give out that analysis of the test, it helps to demonstrate or make meaning of that data. One of the things that they brought out is not only that data tells a story, but also to figure out what that story is. So it talks about how, as programs, not to just give data and report it out, but also get to kind of play with the data and figure out what's happening and figure out and just figure out overall different methods or different resources that can help support the decision making within the program. So what was the main takeaway from this? To investigate and dig into program data, and don't just report data out and not know the reasoning why behind it. One of the activities that they did in this session was they gave us a made up table 4. And basically what we had to do was we had to look at the table 4. And for those of you, and for those who may be new to CCR, the table 4 is your MSG table. So basically it has the 6 levels of ABE, the 6 levels of ESL. And then on the last column, it's going to have your percentage of how many of students that obtain a MSG that was on that level, or when they go from one EFL to the next. And one of the things that brought out was, it was like, some of the numbers were lower compared to the others. And then we had to strategize an idea as to what our programs would do to support why that data point was low. With that table, the ESL level 4 the ESL level 4 was lower compared to the other levels. So as data detectives, we were all in groups gathering different information as to why is that, and then what are some things that we would suggest to help with the ESL level 4s. And so some of the things that the groups came up with was, we would get together with the instructional staff and just talk about like what the different type of strategies in the classroom that can be implemented, and also different strategies that can be used to support the students that are in those level 4 classes obtain their MSG. But it also talked about there are other factors as to why that could be as well. We all know test anxiety is a thing. We know that we know that depending on the condition of the day, that some students may not all test on the same level, or the same at that time. It just may not have been a good time. So there are a lot of different factors that contribute to testing, but also getting an idea of why that is really matters to overall program performance. So the takeaway from that was just ensuring that when we look at data, to dig into it and to figure out why that is. And at ACC, we have implemented instructor data reports. At the end of every semester, we print out a data report to give to the instructors that explains kind of their levels and what students in that level should be able to do, and that's based off of the EFL indicators document. So the next session that I want to talk about with student data is just interpreting NRS tables. So this session was in a way similar to the first one, but it was different in that it introduced the EFL indicators and what they mean. So the EFL indicators is basically a document that has a list of objectives and goals that is per EFL level. So for example, a student that is an ABE2, for reading, they should be able to have proficiencies in certain areas. And for math, they should have proficiencies in certain levels. In certain indicators. And for ESL, the same thing. An ESL level 2 student should be able to do the following with reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So it just depends on however your program, again, does their assessment methods. But this session brought out the link that assessment to instruction, again, is important. It's important of not only knowing what the data means, but also what can it do for program performance. And it talked about having targeted practices for effective testing and communication with instructional staff. So one of the things that we do at ACC is we have a group of right now 7 assessment specialists, and those assessment specialists are responsible for testing certain classes. And so that way, that fosters that communication between the assessment specialist and the instructor. And what happens is, once students earn a certain amount of hours, 40 for ABE, HSC, and 50 for ESL, the assessment specialist goes out to those classes and they test the students. They provide communication with the instructor as to when testing is going to happen. The assessment specialist goes out to the class, they test the student. They also give the students, they give the instructor an analysis of that test. So that way, in turn, the instructor will know how to tailor the student goals and what to work with them on. The main takeaway from this, again, that data matters, and that analyzing data matters, and not, like I said, not just reporting it out, but also knowing the meaning behind that data. And it also talks about data-driven program performance. So basically, when we have programs that are driven by data, it truly improves the overall quality of the program. And one thing that he did during the session was that he gave out certain indicators to say, if you have high performance but low persistence, this means one thing. If you have high performance, high persistence, this means something else. So there's a correlation between student persistence and also how they perform on those tests. So that's why attendance in classes really matters. There was I'm sorry. This is where in this session again that I was introduced to EFL indicators, because I was like, I had been in my role for a little bit of time, and when I saw the EFL indicators and what they were, I was like, that's it. So that led to, again, the sharing out of data reports with the instructors, because truly instruction, data, and assessment all go hand in hand. This also brought out one of the other collection methods that we have recently developed at our institution, which was the use of surveys. Now, this was saying earlier, in our programs, we do strive to collect the mandated numbers of FTEs, the amount of MSGs, and our post-test rate. Again, those are things that we have to collect. But however, the stories that make up the numbers matter as well. Surveys are another way of collecting data for program performance, and this gives an overall look into all aspects of the program. So a survey is grounded in the understanding of opinions from varying resources. But even though that there are varied opinions, there's also some similar understandings between them. And one of the things that I'm doing now is I'm going through the results of our class evaluations, and I'm looking at what were some common trends, what were some common things, because these were from different students that were enrolled in our programs, but yet have an informed decision as to how the classes are, and what different things they would need to feel more supported in our programs. And one of the things that he brought out was, if a survey is given, please do something to act on the survey results. We know that sometimes we complete surveys and it's like nothing happens with them. So one of the things too is, if we do a survey, then we make sure that something is done with that survey. So I have included a sample of a survey that we use here at our site. And again, it's my hope that everyone can see my screen.
We can.
So this is an example of a survey that we completed, that we did at our site. This was converted into a Google form. So we asked these questions to the students. It was, the first couple questions was about the instructor and then classroom methods, and it was just about the general overview of the class, because as we know, the students again, when we're talking about the correlation with class attendance, every 15 minutes matters. So that was one of the things that we talked. One of the reasons why we had this success is because we wanted to make sure that not only do students feel like that their time was being used effectively, but also was the work that we're doing helping students learn. And all of our students were generally supportive of every question that was asked. So we had a lot of strongly agrees to most of these questions. And then also, one of the things that we did too was, not only did we look at the class and the instructor, we also asked the students to take a minute to evaluate their input into the course. We asked them to evaluate how many sessions did they attend in person. And then on average, how many hours per week did they put into the course? So these were different questions that we asked, just to ensure not only are the students again evaluating just the class input, but also their actual input into the class. And then we asked them one thing that they enjoyed about the class and one thing they wish they could change about the course. And we're still going through some of those results of those surveys, and we are getting ready to send out our next round of these for the spring term as well.
So we already have some questions regarding your survey, Dr. Tao. So I don't know if you have time to answer them right now, or we can continue with your presentation and answer them at a later time.
Sure, I can go ahead and answer them, sure.
Okay, so Tracy is asking if we have permission to use your survey,
Sure.
the sample. Okay, and then she's also asking, do you have a class attendance policy, and what happens if the student does not attend according to the hours per week that is according to your attendance policy?
So we currently have an attendance policy. Yes, our policy is that students are required to attend 80% of the class, which roughly for our classes is about 9.5 hours a week. And then we do have a policy that if students do not show for class over a 2-week period, then their folder is to be submitted to our LEIS specialist who will follow up, who will then follow with the student and try to retain that student to retain that student. Either maybe it's a certain need that they have at the time, maybe it's something different. Each instructor, we do ask them to fill out a follow-up form in which which shows that they've reached out to the student. Because one of the things I'm going to talk about in the student experience is when we say we want to reach the student before the moment happens. Because what happens is that sometimes when the student is being reached out to, it's at the point where the folder is being turned in or they're being dropped from the class. And so
Right.
one of the things that we try to do to mitigate that is that we ask that our instructors reach out to the students to see, hey, what's going on? How can we support you continuing in class? Because it's never our goal we want to make sure that every student that we meet obtains the needs that they have for whatever area that they're wanting to go into.
Right, and giving them that opportunity as much as possible. Yeah, that's excellent. And then Janae is wondering if this survey is for all classes, for the ABE, ESL, and all levels, or is it for specific?
Yes. So we did send this survey out to all of our classes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can everybody see?
Yep, it looks good.
Okay. All right. So this is where we're going to go into our first breakout room. And these are the questions that we will kind of use as a guide. What kinds of data do you collect in your program? How is the data collected and maintained in your program? In what ways can we become more of a data detective? And how can the student experience shape our approach to collecting and responding to our data? So this is the next part of my presentation, which is the student experience. So the student experience started recently here at our institution due to a need of it started out in our advising model, but then it just transformed to college bound. So we have established a student and employee experience committee to which I represent our division, which is workforce and economic development, on that committee. Next slide, please. So why is the student experience important? It is important for these major reasons. Students enroll in our programs. So they enroll in our programs, and not only do they enroll in our programs, but they also participate and engage in our programs as well. And students have the firsthand experience of our classes, of our intake experiences, of our official testing experiences, and they also shape the trajectory of our programs. So students have a lot of influence on our program decisions because they are the ones that we serve. Next slide, please. So what this allowed us to do was, as a part of this committee, I looked at it started out with just the CCR program, looking at what are the entry points of our program. What parts make up the student experience? So from the moment that they start with us to the moment that they complete with us, what are those processes and what is the vital points behind the process that makes our student experience so successful? So there are 4 main entry points of a student. It is interest, entry, progress, and completion. In a few minutes, you'll hear me talk about the other part that is still ongoing and in development and in conversations amongst myself and other partners at our institution. But the main thing behind these is that interest is basically, how do our programs get the word out about what we offer? And how can students, once they hear about our programs, how do they go about signing up for those programs? The next entry point that we have is actually entry. What are the programs, what are the steps that once a student signs up, what are the steps that they have to do to enter into the program? For us, it would be they have to go through an intake session. And during the intake sessions, when they do their paperwork and their testing. Now, progress. Now the student, they heard about our program, they went through intake. What do they do while they're in the program? And progress really is the longest entry point of a student because like I said, it varies from student to student about how much time that they will complete with us. And the last one is completion. What happens once a student finishes? What happens once they complete that final GED test? What happens once they complete that final HiSET exam? What happens once they exit out of ESL? What steps are there for them? Next slide, please. So here's the thing to remember about entry points. The entry points are not in any necessary order. Because what happens, and anybody who's very familiar with CCR, is that we have students who may come in at one point, they progress, but then a different life event, life circumstance happens, and they have to drop out, they have to leave our program, but then they return. So this goes back to furthering their completion. When each entry point is mapped out, it is easy to identify errors or corrections to verify about that process. One of the things that I sat and did in the whole data world is figuring out, okay, what exactly happens in each and every step. And this map that I created for our program is a very generic map because we understand there's so many specifics within that. So what they also taught us is that each point should be flexible and have different routes within each if offering multiple programs. So what happens is maybe the entry point is different if you have a certain program, if you have a different program. Within each point, it is possible to lose students. So remember, there may be some students that heard about the program but just did not take the initiative to enter into the program. Or there may be students who went in, they entered the program, but they may never start the program. There may be students who heard about the program, they signed up, they went through the intake, the orientation, they started class, but for whatever reason it may be, they had to drop out. And there may be that one student who you know has one test left, but because of conditions and things that happen, they may drop out of that program. Within each point, again, it is possible to lose students, but it is important to identify the transitions in which point students are lost in as well. Next slide, please. So this is also going to be in your handout. But this is the map that I sat down and looked at, and after looking at some different studies about this, this is what we created for our CCR program, and remind you, this may be different depending on the program offerings that you have. But this shows literally every step from interest to entry to progress to completion. And in between each one, there's a bridge because it lets us know that once a student enters, the next step is entry. Once they enter, the next step is their progress. And then once they progress, they complete. Now, we are adding a fifth element to this step, and after completion, there's transition. So we want to look at how students, after they complete our program, where do they go next? Do they go for employment? Do they enroll in a curriculum course? Do they enroll in a Con Ed course? So these are the different things that we are currently looking at within our program. And basically at every step, there's different things that happen. Now, the reason why I've circled the progress to completion, this is where for us, and I don't know how every other program may see that, but for us, the progress to completion is where we lose majority of the students. And that's not saying anything about any type of how a program runs, how it operates. That's not what that's saying. What that's saying is that's just the realization that many students, that once they start, it often takes time, or for some, they may never go to that completion state. And so the reason why that circle is because that's one of the hardest bridges that sometimes that we have within our program, and within also other elements contribute to that as well. One of the things that we do for students once they complete with us, whether they graduate with us, is we do give them a certificate for a free class that they can use, that they can either go to the curriculum side and take a course, or if they want to do like a short-term class in Con Ed, we also offer that as well to the students. And then within each step, we've done a detailed bridge of what that means. So this slide that I'm showing is very general, but in the follow-up to this, I'm going to set out the details of every step that we use, and hopefully, what this helped me figure out, okay, these are some of the possible holes that we have in our program. And not that that's like a bad thing, but these are things that, hey, we can look at this. Next slide, please. So this led us to the next session regarding the student experience, which was the intake session. So this session talked about how important it is for programs to be flexible in their intake, because that's where the student experience begins, is the intake session. So the way that this program defined intake was registration, orientation, testing, advising, and scheduling. Because as we know, those first 12 hours are critical. Those first 12 hours are critical to how we retain students in our programs. So this was basically saying to figure out the amount of ways to reduce the amount of time or complications that intake can have. So basically it's saying when we look at our processes, what things do we have in place that may help the students, and what things do we have that we may need to reassess? What things do we need to think about? This also provided resources for students to take the courses in a timely manner, and it also discussed advising. One of the main takeaways that I got from this session is that an effective and efficient process can create effective student engagement. So how in our programs as a whole do we engage students and to be able to have them participate in our classes more? And that starts at the intake process. Next slide, please. So this session that I attended with the student experience was basically talking about the 4 C's of student retention, which is communication, collaboration, consistency, and celebration. This was based off of the Union Adult Learning Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They had varying options for student intake, flex scheduling. One of the things that they did was name boards. So one of the things that their program did to celebrate students was, say they had a theme, and the theme was ocean. They had an ocean theme. So they decorated the wall in an ocean format. And say that a student got an MSG, they would take a fish and they would like put their initials on it and they would put it on the wall. Or say that a student earned a job, they would take like a starfish, put their initials on it, put it on the wall, and every part of the wall meant something. And what they found out was when they did this, students would see this wall and they're like, well, what do I got to do to get on that wall? And so the job was they were trying to figure out how many different ways that they could get on this wall because they saw all these fish, they saw all these starfish, they saw all these different, I don't know, treasure boxes, different things that are associated with the ocean. They were trying to figure out, well, how do I get on there? And so what that did was it showed it contributed to program performance because when the wall was filled, they celebrated. There was collaboration. There was collaboration across the board between their community, their transitions instructors, the school system. They're affiliated with the school system, so the school system recognizes their institution as a place where students can go to earn their high school equivalency. There was consistency between staff and instructors, and there was also a celebration at every level. So the main takeaway from this session was that all parts of the program mattered. Every position in the program mattered. So it truly took a team to value its members, and every person was involved for the overall success of the students. Next slide, please. So this last session that I went to was talking about testing. This session was an innovative testing hub, and what happened was it's based in Illinois, and basically what they did was they became the testing center for a certain region in Illinois, and basically the students had to be referred to them. They would go to the center and take the test, and then from there they would have different results that were shared out with the instructors. And basically they had different way of communicating with the students. The students actually signed up for an appointment. They came. They would be checked in, verified. It would be comparison to running like a GED testing center, except for like their TABE or CASAS or whatever test they facilitated. And one of the things that this takeaway session taught me was that sometimes it's okay to think outside the box because it can render great results. They found that there was really great retention when they did this. So there was, and they just found overall that it improved the student engagement with testing. Next slide, please. And I think we're going to skip this. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. So in conclusion, what has ACC done as a result of this, as a result of some of these things? Next slide, please. So I did mention as a data coordinator, I've walked away with the understanding of how to support instructors better using data. I've also figured out ways of how we share data out. We are now sharing data reports. Our campus is going through a redesign model, just as a whole, as to how we look at students and how we view students from those entry and exit points that I mentioned earlier. Our advising model also has been revised across the campus. There are different things that our campus is currently working on to improve our student advising model. And so I'm excited to be a part of that work. Next slide, please. And I believe this is the end of my presentation. So my contact information is here. I hope that everyone took something with them. And I was just excited to be able to do this, and I look forward to doing it again. So I just really appreciate everyone's time for coming out today.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Tyler. You guys can definitely stick around if you want. I know we've got some questions in the chat, but if you do need to leave, we also know that we're about to go over time. So just looking at the questions, I don't really know what Karen is referencing here, but she did ask who pays for the free class. So I don't know if there's something free class mentioned in one of your handouts or documents, but Do you know what Karen is asking about, Dr. Tyler?
Yes, ma'am, I do. One of the
Okay,
things I mentioned was that we do offer a free class to students once they complete with us, right, they graduate to our GED. So that is provided through our foundation.
got it. Excellent. Thank you. And yes, Lori, you will be able to see the slides. So that is a good segue for me to place in the chat that for all of these webinars and trainings that we do online, we eventually get them up on our website, NC Title II, in the Professional Development Archive. So you will be able to access the recording of this session in addition to all of the handouts and materials that Dr. Tyler has graciously provided us with, including that survey. So you will be able to access that on NC Title II. Janae has also asked, are you showing instructors how to utilize reports and advances for all the purposes that you mentioned in today's presentation?
Yes, so that is what the data reports that we use. We base it off of our advances reports.
Okay, excellent. And then final question, and sorry if I missed yours, definitely you can type it in the chat again. Going back to those EFL indicators, Janae was asking, are they the EFL descriptors in the NRS manual, or is this more a performance indicator?
So they are in the NRS, yes.
Excellent. Okay. I should probably know the answer to this question, but all transparency, guys, I'm still learning a lot here. So eventually I will have the answer to that question. But Dr. Tyler, one more thing before we go. I think I had this up. Yes. So I'm going to unabashedly once again advertise. So for our final session in this series, our subject matter expert for generative AI, Kristen Earhart, will be closing us out. I placed in the chat the registration link for that. So I highly recommend you sign up. She's going to go beyond ChatGPT. So if you're interested in learning more about implementing generative AI into your instruction, lesson planning, administrative work, come join us for the final session. It is on May 8th at 2 p.m. Thank you everyone for sticking around. If you did, I think we're going to close it out at this much. Thank you again so much, Dr. Tyler Harvey. I learned a lot. I believe everyone else did as well. So take care, have a great afternoon, and I will be seeing you all soon for something. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.